Hello, everyone. Welcome to Loro and Friends NFL Offseason edition. Here, as we kind of now are in this phase, like to talk about some free agency and all that. First week of free agencies in the books. I'm with Ben Kurst today, and Ben, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me again, Loro. Looking forward to talking some football tonight.
It's going to be a great show. So let's talk about first the Patriots' recent offseason pickup so far, and let's talk about who they added. So they re-signed Brian Hoyer to be the backup quarterback for Mac Jones, which is huge. Brian Hoyer is kind of a player and coach on the Patriots when it comes to quarterbacks. I like that they kept James White. I think James White didn't want. I felt like James White's staying was the key to Mac Jones's development. Ty Montgomery, I think, is going to be great on special teams. He could be used as a wide receiver and a running back, kind of like that Cordell Patterson role. Like that pickup, too. Obviously, they kept Matt Slater and Nick Folk. Didn't really get the Terrence Mitchell signing, though. But I love the Mac Wilson trade, by the way. What stood out to you in those additions for the Patriots so far, Ben?
Well, first of all, just like to say that it's obviously a complete 180 in terms of the Patriots did for this offseason. In Max Jones' second year, they decided to stand pat for a lot and not obviously spend big. Now, they didn't have much money that they had this past year, to get all these guys like Johnny Smith, Nelson Aguilar, and Matt Judon and stuff like that. But they did get some internal pieces, some guys that hopefully can keep their culture a little bit, including Matthew Slater, who I think is going to be a Patriot for life. They also got Devin McCourty back, so two captains essentially are going to be back for at least one more seasons. Probably going to be their last seasons for both. Um, James White, I really like the fit. James has been kind of having some situations off the field and injuries, kind of told him. But when he's out there, he's going to be a huge, crucial role. And obviously, before he got hurt against the New Orleans in Week 3, he is a good piece in the backfield, can catch the ball well, and he's obviously a vital piece, especially with the Patriots still needing that kind of breakthrough weapon. And White should definitely help out a bit in terms of their backfield. Brian Hoyer, it's honestly a good stopgap. He's been around Tom, he's been around Mac Jones, been around Stidham. Just a bunch of different quarterbacks, but Brian Hoyer is really just kind of the guy that they can use in the practice squad. And the biggest thing too is he's just a good teammate, great mentor, and he knows the system well. So he's good to see him back in the fold. They also brought Juwan Bentley back, who I think personally, I'm a very 50-50 guy on Bentley. He could play the run really well, but he always has problems in pass coverage. That's where I think the Patriots definitely should be able to get much better in the draft, get a little bit younger, get a little bit faster. They also tagged Jacoby Myers for a 1-year RFA second round tender. Big thing for Myers is he's coming off a pretty good season. There could be an extension possibly coming soon, hopefully with Jacoby Myers. Even though I personally hope that he's not our number one down the road, he's a good piece like Kendrick Bourne. But for a guy like Mac Jones, he's going to need that outside threat, which they still haven't gotten yet after about a week or two of free agency. We could talk about too maybe some pieces, some receivers that could be available free agency still, and then obviously go to the draft. But overall, the Patriots kind of it's more standing pat. The Terrence Mitchell signing, the Ty Montgomery signings. The Ty Montgomery, I've known him from a couple of teams. Brandon Bolden ended up moving, so he's going to probably be in that Brandon Bolden role. And then Terrence Mitchell, I just really think that they're using just him for a depth piece, really, at this point in time, because we'll go through it. The Patriots lost a lot of big time players, as I actually predicted. I'm coming into this offseason. I predicted that J.C. Jackson would be moving, just because I think that he wanted a lot of money. A couple other guys we'll talk about, but the biggest one, the Chase Winovich for Mac Wilson, I thought that was a pretty interesting trade. But the biggest question to me was the Shaq Mason trade, which we'll get into a bit. That one just completely I don't know exactly what they were doing there. But I think overall the Patriots still can possibly make some moves just because they haven't really spent a lot. But I think personally they're going to spend a lot of their needed positions. It's actually good news, though. I was listening to actually a Boston radio football station actually this morning on my way to work, and they were saying that it's going to be a very heavy wide receiver class, which the Patriots really need a lot of help in. It's going to be a really big corner group, which they're really needed for, and tackle. Tackle, they've lost a couple of guys already on tackle. Trent Brown, who right now is looking at Seattle possibly as a team. I know New England still has a little bit of hope for him to possibly come back, but it doesn't seem like he's going to at this point in time. So really the Patriots have to kind of fill a lot of holes, and they got to really fill them pretty quickly, because sooner than later, they kind of have to see what their team looks like for next year.
Yeah, you're right about that, but I said to you why I like the Mack Wilson trade is because I think Winovich didn't work out. I think that this move kind of reunites him with Mac Jones. You got the Alabama boys back together. You got him and Christian Barmore back. I kind of want another guy to be reuniting with Mac Jones on the offensive side of the football, and that's John Mechie. I mean, I want him personally just because I feel like that Mechie could be Mac's number one target again.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, Laura. I mean, you look at the free agency targets. I mean, Jarvis Landry's still out there. I know Phil Perry, who's on ESPN Sports Boston, mentioned Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who was one of the top guys in yards per reception this past year with Green Bay. Not going to obviously break the bank, but still out there. I don't think it would help the team go over the top. But with a lot of these moves, though, this is more of a transition phase. I think for a lot of fans have to kind of realize is I hope they don't take a step back, but I do also hope that they realize this and say, listen, a lot of good talent went somewhere else, right? And they kind of have to see this in a way of, did Bill just want to kind of be like this just because? Because you look at it this way, right? He's kind of going through this type of offseason with Tom Brady in a way, right? Tom Brady, if they didn't sign anybody, a bunch of people, you at least had Tom Brady kind of overtake a lot of the deficiencies. Now you don't have Brady. You haven't had him for a couple of years now. And personally, I think it's a little unfair to Mac Jones in a way. It's a second year. You got to really see what type of talent you have. And it's just like, if you don't see it from free agency, then you have to maybe go to the draft, in which way there is three receivers from Alabama who Mac Jones is fairly fond with. And you mentioned Loro, John Mechie. So maybe that's what they're thinking. Maybe they're trying to get some guys that he knows already personally from college, and maybe trying to start that rapport in a way to kind of get him, hopefully building up to in terms of where he wants to be.
I forgot another name, Slade Bolden, who I also want to be a Patriot as well.
Yeah, Slade Bolden's obviously could be possibly a third, fourth round pick. I know he said he modeled this game after Julian Edelman, which I think it's really hard to ask for him. But I do think it's kind of cool in the way for him to kind of say that. I think just the Saban Belichick connection. There's going to be a lot of guys out there. Christian Harris, I think at linebacker could be a very interesting piece. Dylan Moses, a lot of, your Roll Tide, Loro. You obviously know a ton of guys from that team, and obviously not a big Tide fan myself, but there's a ton of talent there that I would absolutely love. And my guy that I would love to see them get is Jamison Williams. I personally think that he is a guy that can catch the ball from a quick slant and stuff and just take it to the house. They haven't had much of that. And I just think that, Mechie would be good. He'd be a fun piece. But they have to kind of see what they want to do from here, right? They have a good running game. They have Harris, they have Stevenson. But now you take away, and I don't know if you saw this, Loro. Apparently, the Patriots, Jakob Johnson, right? He was their fullback. I guess there was a report out there today saying that I guess the Patriots actually did not want Johnson back because apparently they're going to be going into a little bit of different formations with their offense, or they thought that was really interesting. So maybe you're going to start seeing more production, like I said, out of potentially a guy like Jonnu Smith. Well, obviously struggled in his first year. Maybe they go to more two tight packages, like two tight ends, and kind of go that way because you still really don't have much on the outside that a defense can kind of look at and say, oh, that guy, you have to kind of respect the outside. So I personally think that if they get a guy like a Jamison Williams, right, a guy that a lot of people can say, oh, he's only a rookie, but you know how much speed he has, right? The Patriots need to find a way to get younger and faster. That's really the simple thing.
And that's why I don't think they're using the free agent class to get a wide receiver, though, because they spent so much money last year on like Henry and Smith. Now we got to talk about some of the subtractions here, such as Jakob Johnson, who is now a Raider, now reunited with Josh McDaniels. Brandon Bolden is now a Raider, reunited with Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler. J.C. Jackson's now a Charger. Shaq Mason went from Mac Jones to Tom Brady. Now that Tom Brady's now out of retirement, and now he's still playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Ted Karras is going to be playing for the Bengals now, and he's going to be blocking and protecting Joe Burrow. So I didn't get why Shaq Mason was traded. I felt like that the Patriots should have not traded away Shaq Mason because Shaq Mason really was vital to this offensive line. And I really felt like I didn't want to see him go. But at the same time, since he's kind of getting up there in age, I think that we have to get younger on the interior, and we need to get a tackle too.
Yeah, I remember I was actually going to a hockey game in New York City that day when I saw the train. I was on the train, just kind of just looking through my phone, just kind of being bored and stuff. And I go through Twitter and I see a tweet that it says Shaq Mason on it. And all of a sudden it says Shaq Mason traded to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And my eyes just went, wow, like what's going on here? Because, the way this offseason's going with the Patriots is a lot of key guys are on the move. And Shaq Mason is a guy I figure that maybe would want to stick around and keep. Now, to be fair for the Buccaneers, their interior is definitely still, they've lost some guys for Tom, and Tom obviously loves Shaq. He's a huge Shaq fan with New England. But the return was just the return lower for essentially a top 10 guard that the Bucs got was absolutely disgusting. I did not like that return at all. A 6th-round pick, like really? You see the Robert Woods trade the other day, Loro, for the Titans, and it's just like I would have taken that trade in an absolute heartbeat. A guy in Robert Woods who's been a number 2 receiver, number 3 receiver, and especially to a need for the Patriots. And I think that Robert Woods would fit well. I mean, I know that they would probably have to get some more receivers, but just looking at that trade on paper, it's like I don't know. I personally thought that the Bucs absolutely won that trade without a doubt. I just have no idea what the Patriots are doing in this case. But now Shaq Mason is gone. It's unfortunate to see because I really like Mason. So now the last couple of years, right? You've lost Joe Tooney and you've lost Shaq Mason, 2 of your main guards. We'll see about Isaiah Wynn down the road here because I personally don't know if Isaiah Wynn is going to be in their future plans. They do have Michael Onwenu, who didn't play a lot last year, who can kind of move around, but you can't trust him to play 3 other different positions, right? Your offensive line right now, Laura, is standing as this: left tackle, Isaiah Wynn. Left guard, nothing as of right now. Center, David Andrews. Right guard, don't know as of right now. Maybe one. Then right tackle.
Or maybe Sarah Durant, who could play right guard, and then at left guard could be Michael One, who could play left guard too, and then you could start Justin Herron at right tackle.
I saw the experience the first half of last year. And it was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster. There's a reason why they looked at Lyle Collins from Dallas, who I really, really, really liked. And by the way, the Bengals got 3 really good offensive linemen now for Joe Burrow. And now you look at another guy who's one of the top tackles who currently, as of right now, is visiting the Dolphins. That's Ron Armstead. And that would be a huge pickup to help Tua Tagovailoa stay upright. So the Patriots really need to find a way for a couple places in the offseason. They got to find a way in terms of how to knock down some draft picks because the Bills, in terms of his as a GM and in his draft in the past, has just been bad. But you have to give credit where credit's due, and he obviously drafted Mac Jones as the future quarterback, and they got Christian Barmore, a very good defensive lineman who I think is going to be in our future for the long term and a great player. But overall, they got to find some good receivers, and that's where they've really struggled. They're not going to go in the free agency market here. They got to find some guys that can catch the ball and catch with some speed, and also maybe a big guy. I don't know how you would feel about a guy like.
I also think if I were New England, I think you got to trade N'Keal Harry. Is he going to be in our plans this upcoming season? I doubt it.
Well, I don't know who would really want N'Keal Harry at this point. What kind of value has he kind of, since you say, oh, yeah, we'll give N'Keal Harry, what type of value will the team know? No, I know that the trade that I would personally love is Harry to the Cardinals for Andy Isabella, because I know that Andy Isabella has played with the is split in UMass, and I guess the Patriots early on this offseason had some maybe has interest in there, so you could see like a receiver swap there. But I, I mean, I feel like something would happen by now with Harry. I think Harry's going to be on the roster. As much as it's painful to say, I just don't know how much value there is for him, and it does suck, because we've given this guy so many chances at first round pick and just not panned out at all. So the way I'm seeing this team right now, and this is the way I'm thinking, they got to figure out this team essentially is planning for the long term. They're not essentially looking at this team as a right now, unless you can tell me, or another person can tell me as a Patriot fan, you can tell me with this roster right now that this roster with all the talent the other teams got. You look at the Chargers, you look at Russell Wilson in Denver, you look at now Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. Even though he could be suspended for a couple games, regardless, that's still a much better roster. The Ravens, I have my questions, but they're always a tough team. Always got to keep tabs on that. Josh Allen, the Bills, of course, are just getting much better. A ton of teams in front of you are getting better. And you look at where the Patriots kind of in terms of the ranking of the AFC, and they're more in the middle to the bottom of the pack compared to kind of where they were last year. I mean, I'm not saying the season that they had was a fluke at all, but they kind of got to get a little bit of lucky against some really good teams. I'm not taking anything away from the Patriots, because the Patriots, I think overall for Mac Jones' first season was considered a success. Disappointing the way it finished at the end of the season after the bye, but regardless of the fact, you got to see this team go upward in terms of their future. If you see starting things go down, then you start to kind of question the front office and say, listen, okay, there's a ton of talent out there at receiver market, especially for a lot of guys, right? Amari Cooper got released from the Cowboys. Maybe the Patriots could have had a chance at Cooper. Didn't happen. Juju Smith-Schuster could have had a chance on him. Didn't happen. Allen Robinson, I thought could have been a perfect piece for Mac Jones. Didn't happen. So you kind of have to kind of see this and say, who wants to play for this Patriots team anymore? And they look at this roster and say, listen, maybe go from the draft, kind of start younger, kind of build these guys up, and then see how things go from there.
That's what I'm kind of thinking too. I don't think they're going to use the wide receiver market and the free agent market, just because I think the Patriots are kind of in a transition type phase. I mean, you got good veterans such as McCourty and Slater to kind of help with that. Yep. But also the coaching staff of the Patriots is still not yet finalized. But from what I know, Joe Judge is probably going to be the quarterback's coach. And we need to figure out who is going to be calling plays on offense. And I still think it's going to be Nick Caley, our tight ends coach. Will probably get the jump from tight ends coach to offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, besides the really minimal things this offseason for the Patriots, their roster, their coaching staff is a mess too. A lot of things transition in this coaching staff. And now we see Josh McDaniels going with Dave Ziegler. And look what they have now. They added Patriots West essentially over there. They are interested in Stephon Gilmore. They added Brandon Bolden. They added Jakob Johnson. Hey, Josh McDaniels run more third and runs with Brandon Bolden. We saw a lot of that last year. But hey, they got some talent. And they got a big one. They got a big fish, which primarily Aaron Rodgers is looking at the situation now and saying, oh, I signed a huge extension, and now my top receiver, who I've been for a long time, is out. He is now with Derek Carr, and that's Devontae Adams. You see Josh McDaniels now saying, oh, I left New England and got number one in Devontae Adams. Hey, I'm doing pretty well. But obviously, he looks at that situation too, and he saw that all the other teams in the AFC West just got so much better. So, the only way really that they can stand a chance with other teams is they got to get talent. And this is what this Patriots team is lower as of right now is they're below, I think, the Buffalo Bills in terms of their roster. Do I think that they can compete with them? Sure. But they got to really show it. They got to get some upgrades for sure in a couple of areas, kind of telling me, can they improve them? Miami gets maybe a top tackle for Tua. Dolphins are always a tough test. They beat the Patriots 2-0 last year in the regular season. They're a tough test.
Yeah, and then the Jets are just the Jets. I mean, the Jets are going to –
The Jets
I think
compete,
Jets. I like Zach Wilson though, but I think that the Jets need a little bit more time.
They do. I mean, you look at just the other teams in the AFC East, and it's just that the Jets still just have little bit left to go. And you still really don't know what Zach Wilson is, really, right? He's a small quarterback, has a lot of skill, a lot of talent. He's a number 2 overall pick, kind of like Trevor Lawrence in a way. And you just got to kind of see how things go from there. So I think that the Jets are probably going to be, right in that phase still where they're still not there yet. And then,
Also, you forgot that Chandler Jones, who was a Patriot, he reunited with Josh McDaniels in Vegas. So basically, McDaniels and Ziegler are being very active right now in Vegas.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think Stephon Gilmore, who, by the way, I would love a reunion with at this point in time, but I
probably not going to happen. I think Jonathan Jones is going to be a guy that's going to step up. I think he's going to have a breakout season. I think he's going to be healthy, and I also have I also have an Auburn reunion in my Patriots mock draft. I want Roger McCreary to come to the Patriots because he's a really good corner out of Auburn, even though he's on my enemy school at Auburn.
Yeah, so 2 guys for the Patriots, 1 guy from each class, via the draft and via free agency. For the free agent guy is a guy that's been around the league, really well-known player, obviously kind of at the second half of his career, but I think he would help out a little bit here with this Patriots team, and that's Patrick Peterson. I think Patrick Peterson can kind of help that cornerback market with this team. The corners are a little bit younger. They're a little bit thinner on that position. I don't think it would cost you a ton, so I think that could be a very low-risk, high-reward type of move if the Patriots maybe took a look at Patrick Peterson. But the guy I think a lot of people are going to be looking at, I know you mentioned Kyle Gordon, but I really like Andrew Booth, I think his name is, from Clemson.
Yeah, from Clemson.
Yeah, and I think that he's a guy, he's not crazy big, but he's long arms.
Like I said, I like Kyler Gordon, but I prefer Roger McCreary at 21 because I love SEC players, and I think that even though I don't like Auburn, I think that we need a corner, and I think that have an Auburn reunion with Jonathan Jones.
Yeah, and still a couple of guys out there at linebacker that I think the Patriots could take a look at. Rashaan Evans from Tennessee. And then, Julio Jones, even though he's kind of at the second half of his career, I personally would welcome a potential, Bill loves to take guys, that have high talent-wise and obviously come with, I'm going to say a little bit of baggage because obviously they took AB, and I think AB is just the worst of the worst. But, obviously that was kind of a Tom, input, I guess you could say, on that. Which, by the way, Bill actually had no problems with. If you didn't read the whole background story about it, it was really more Kraft. AB and Kraft kind of had a little more tension, I guess you can say. I guess they did kind of made up, and I guess in a way after the fact, but I guess it was a little too late. But there is some guys still out there, right, for the receiver market. I don't think that they're going to get Odell Beckham Jr. There's some guys at the receiver market, but the linebacking market, personally, Loro, as much as I would not want to see this happen, I would not be surprised because I think Bill likes him, and they're bringing a lot of older guys back. But I think Dante Hightower, I think, could definitely possibly come back. It just feels like this in a way, even though I don't personally want it to happen. As much as I like Hightower, I think that this team has to go younger more than older, and Hightower just getting slower. I saw a tweet from Boston Globe's Ben Volin the other day, and he was saying that it sounds like the Patriots are still trying to get some internal pieces, maybe getting younger. I know that they have some guys through their system. Cameron Brown is a perfect example, a guy from Michigan. He didn't play a lot last year because of injury. I think the year before he was a rookie. So there's some guys that they can kind of take a look at. But let's go through some departures. I know you said I'll kind of go through my list or my analysis in a way. The J.C. Jackson move, of course, is a huge loss. J.C., of course, is obviously a player that has been around the Patriots a long period of time, Mr. INT in a way. And big games, he's very suspect in a way. Stephon Diggs really made him look pretty bad, even though that J.C., I thought, in the wild card game had no problems with him. Diggs didn't have a huge game. There's really kind of Josh Allen found kind of other guys, and they just had no answers regardless. But JC overall has very good ball skills, and he by far is the most talented corner out of that group. And if they came back, that would have been been huge. But, he wanted to get the money, and I wish him well. He's going to a really good team in the Chargers now, which have made a ton of good moves, especially defensively, where they've struggled. Ted Karras is going to the Cincinnati Bengals. That's a very good move for them. He got some stability for Joe Burrow, who I talked about. You also add Alex Kappa from Brady over in Tampa Bay, and obviously you had Collins today from Dallas. So, and apparently, according to Tommy Curran from Boston, Comcast, of course, that's Boston. I guess that the Patriots even offered a contract to Ted Karras, and it sounded like that they decided to go moving forward. I personally like Karras because he gave us some bench options. If guys need a rest or they just got injured, I think he was a good viable piece. Plus, he actually started quite a bit in the second half of the season because they just liked him a little bit more in that rotation. Brendan Bolden, like I said, he's been a long-term special teamer. Wish him the best of luck in Vegas. And Jakob Johnson, our starting fullback, he went to Vegas. Another guy that we have not mentioned yet, who got caught, who was still out there. Not sure if the reunion possibly could be in the work, but I doubt at this point in time. But that's Kyle Van Noy. And Kyle Van Noy, of course, great Patriot. I personally thought he wasn't bad last year. I just think that the Patriots kind of looked at the situation and said, maybe we got to kind of go via the draft and kind of go younger a bit here and maybe try to cut the ties with some guys that we personally love, but that's why it's a business. So, I personally think that, and also Gunnar Olszewski, our punt returner, our main guy, punt returner. Gunnar really didn't play a whole lot of offense, but he did make some key things in the punt return game. He's going to the Steelers on a 2-year deal, $4.2 million. Now, Loro, obviously now all this stuff that we talked about, let's go through some cap space. And I don't know if you follow this guy, but he's a great follow on Twitter. Miguel Benson, Patriots cap space. He essentially goes through all things cap-wise for the Patriots specifically. And so he's saying that he projects the Patriots were having over $11 million in cap space with all that moves, except the signing of Ty Montgomery, which is reported a 2-year deal up to $4 million. And he said that there should be plenty of space to make some moves in the coming days. The team can expect to be plenty of bang for their buck. So, possibly speaking, this week, Loro, even though last week kind of was the frenzy week, I'm not saying the Patriots are going to get any scraps. They possibly could, because obviously they haven't really gone crazy just yet. But possibly, according to this report, possibly something could be brewing in terms of Bill because he's been quiet. He hasn't gone obviously crazy over money-wise. So maybe a move like a Julio Jones, a low-risk high reward, maybe a move for a linebacker, kind of an unexpected way move that I don't think a lot of people are expecting. Maybe Bill's kind of seen this and say, we're taking a step back here. Let's maybe try to sock a bit and maybe see if we get a guy impacted in maybe our group that we're kind of struggling with as of right now. But it seems like the Patriots do have some money that they can spend. And right now, as the things stand out, the first round, they're going to have 21st overall picks, second round, 54th, third round, 85th, fourth round, 127th, fifth round, 170th via from Tampa Bay, sixth round, 200th from the Rams. And the sixth round is, of course, they actually have 2 sixth-round picks, and the second one is the 210th pick overall. So the Patriots really have to kind of fit a lot of different type of roles in each round in the draft. And obviously, you can talk about the draft kind of closer to when the time comes, which won't be until the end of April. But what do you think the Patriots should do, or Loro, for kind of the remaining part of their cap? Do you think that they should use it more in free agency? Do you think that they should keep the money and maybe try to save it up for kind of a bigger shopping spree for next season? Where do you think the cap is for the Patriots, and how do you feel about it, and where do you think that they should take this money for? Down the road.
I think that you got to use the salary cap wisely. I think that they need to use the cap to build around Mac Jones and also have needs on defense too. But I think that you also need to maybe restructure some contracts of other people. That way you have more and more cap space, which I meant to say is. But anyways, with that being said here, Davante Adams, you talked about he's going to the Raiders, and my reaction was it's a Fresno State Bulldog reunion with Davante Adams and Derek Carr. How good is that offense going to be with Davante Adams, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, and Derek Carr?
Yeah, I mean, I did it to kind of analyze it on Wild Sports Talk, not a whole lot, just because it was getting close in terms of myself going to bed, getting myself a little bit tired for work the next day. But I could obviously analyze a little more as of right now. That's a huge home run move for the Las Vegas Raiders. And I was obviously, as James, as a Raider fan, kind of warning James that, this Packers team has a huge cap. And Devontae Adams, I believe, took a franchise tag, if I stand by recalling, last season as well. And personally, I think that this has been in talks for a little while. I think that Aaron Rodgers also said too that he knew that Devontae Adams was going to be on the move actually before he signed the extension. So he was aware of this, which I thought was very interesting because this could have been possibly a move that you would think, oh, like Aaron Rodgers possibly can go somewhere where you can have a better chance to win. Now, I'm not saying that the Packers don't have a chance to win with their roster offensive right now, but you take essentially a really good portion of your success for many years in your offense in Devontae Adams, who is essentially by far the best receiver as of right now, for many years outside Cooper Kupp, who I think could be a good receiver, who could get up to his level over time. But this is a blockbuster, out of all things, between Brady retiring and Deshaun Watson moving on. And this was the most unexpected just bombshell that just happened one day throughout the crazy madness week. And like I said, man, this has been actually a crazy NFL. I don't know. I don't recall these in terms of these bigger moves of an offseason as crazy this one. Also the Patriots not really doing a whole lot, which happened to be last year. They're kind of running the show, I guess you can say in a way. But that man is a great move. I think that helps Derek Carr a lot. He finally gets that big time throw on the outside. Hunter Renfrow was one of the most criminally underrated receivers that we saw last season. And you also have to forget too, Darren Waller. Darren Waller is a great tight end. So you have a really good tight end. You got a very underrated receiver who puts up great yards after the catch, and you add Devontae Adams. Now it's just really up to in terms of Derek Carr in terms of what he can prove, because we've seen a couple quarterbacks that if they just need a couple talents, they can elevate their game for sure. And one guy for sure, Loro, that has elevated the game more like no other, that really struggled on to start off his career, was Josh Allen. Josh Allen, for many seasons, many people didn't expect to have where he is as of right now. They thought possibly he could, but you got a guy like a Stephon Diggs, who is a top 5 receiver probably in this NFL. Josh Allen, his progression, because it's all timing, it's all obviously in the head and it's confidence. And it just takes one or two guys to put into your offense that can just lead to that. Just confidence, repetitions. And I personally think for Derek Carr, this helps him a lot. He's also a college teammate of his from Fresno State. So there's a huge, great connection there. I absolutely love this move for the Las Vegas Raiders, getting to Devontae Adams. And I think that with all the great talent in the AFC West that happened this offseason, that just obviously, puts a cherry on top, really, in terms of how good it was, because he's that good.
Yeah, and beside that, I think that the AFC West is going to be the best division in football this year. I still think the NFC West is still really good. But talk about the AFC West being loaded. But speaking of which, from the Raiders to the Denver Broncos now, which we'll talk about, what was your initial reaction when Russell Wilson got traded from Seattle to Denver? I didn't think that he would be a Denver Bronco, but he did say that. Something I learned about it was Russell Wilson even got drafted by the Colorado Rockies, and he's familiar with Colorado and Denver. But I really think that the Denver Broncos had to get it right at quarterback, Ben. But I was kind of thinking that young head coach, rookie quarterback, I was thinking that Nathaniel Hackett's going to want his own guy, and I wanted him to pair with either Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis. But Denver really had to get it right at quarterback. They felt like that this rookie class wouldn't help.
So look at it this way, a couple things are all right. Obviously, I was a victim. I know the Aaron Rodgers to Denver sweepstakes first. I saw this in a way of this, right? Hackett obviously going to Denver, and John Elway there. They have a ton of great talent offensively. I think they have a very good underrated defense. And now you're safe in terms of what the AFC West has looked like. Just imagine Denver right now, Loro. Would you rather take a guy who has been a great quarterback for a long period of time, or get a guy through the draft and kind of just go through this way, where they kind of essentially, though, they've been just kind of going back and forth in terms of finding that future long term answer. Russell Wilson, when he is on, is a top 5, top 7 quarterback in the NFL. And I personally think that Russell Wilson saw it in a couple things. His family was fine with it because there's a lot of family from Russell Wilson in Colorado. He's still going to be on the West Coast. I think that was a big thing. He didn't have to travel from opposite coast. I know that the other team that possibly was going to look at him was Washington. I personally think that the Broncos was always going to be his first choice. If the Broncos instead just said, listen, we will give you as much as you could in terms of finances and money wise. And I don't know if I'm right about this or not, but I think Colorado also has no taxes. So it's a free tax, one of the free tax states. I could be wrong about that. So stand correct me if you guys happen to know that. But there's a ton of factors into this. I personally didn't think, Laura, that Russell Wilson was going to leave. I personally thought that out of any both quarterbacks, it was going to be Aaron Rodgers. I personally was wrong. I saw this trade happen, and I'm really happy for Russell Wilson. I think he's excited. I think he's ready for this change. And the two things, the biggest thing I saw from Russell Wilson in terms of starting to get his frustration was the first thing. The last 2 Super Bowls he's been at. And he's been at from with Roger Goodell kind of just looking at this game and saying, listen, like, what am I really doing here? You know, Seattle, I think he really likes and he loves the culture, he loves the vision there. But he's such a competitive guy that he looks at this and says, listen, I'm going to take a challenge and maybe try something different, right? And this kind of like, I'm not saying a Brady like per se, but he's looked up to a guy like a Brady, right? And he kind of says, listen, like, you know, time obviously runs its course from one journey, and sometimes you got to go somewhere different and try something different. And personally, I think that Pete Carroll and Seattle and Denver saw this in a way where they can kind of say, listen, okay, Russ, you did so much for us, and on the field, off the field, Russ is a great guy in the community, and he's already started something at Denver Children's Hospital. So him and Sierra do a great job with that stuff as well. So I think it's a great move for Denver. I still think that personally, I don't think that they're the top in the division, but they're a team to watch out for. Absolutely. When you get a guy like Russell Wilson, that team for sure just elevates this game like crazy because they have not found their future quarterback ever since essentially Peyton Manning when they left. And now you got a guy like Russell Wilson. Now people can say, oh, he's a noticeable one. He knows for sure. And their coaching staff knows that he's the guy on long term. I really love this move for Denver, and hopefully it works out.
Yeah, I think it's going to work out, but do you still think that Kansas City's still the best team in the AFC West? You still think that they're going to win the division, but I'm not saying that they're going to win the division by a lot, though. I think it's probably going to be one of the closest races that we will ever see.
So, one of the guys on the Boston morning station today, radio station, the sports one, who did a football show, they essentially called the AFC West a murderer's row. And I personally think that is 100% accurate. You see every team in that division, right? Obviously, you look at the Chiefs; they're probably the favorite. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid. They also added Juju Smith-Schuster to a great receiving core, obviously with Tyreek Hill, who, by the way, looks like hasn't been the final of an extension, but it sounds like from many things outside of the building that looks like he's trying to get an extension with them. Travis Kelce, right? Tyrann Mathieu, shockingly, is still out there on the market. I'm curious to see in terms of where he goes. Imagine he comes in defensive wise with a ton of other teams from the AFC West or Stephon Gilmore. I mean, all the talent there, right? Then you go to the Raiders. The Raiders, obviously, they have Derek Carr. They had Devontae Adams, Chandler Jones on their defense. Max Crosby got extended. They have a great kicker. And then you look at Denver, training for Russell Wilson, great offense, young offense. Their secondary is really good with Patrick Surtain, obviously getting their draft from last year, a good coaching staff. And then you also look at – what am I missing?
Well, my question for you is you think Derek Carr is going to get extended by the Raiders? I think he will, though.
I do. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, you know, he kind of probably needed a help piece with him, right? He needed just kind of that. I personally think that he was going to stay, but maybe another year, possibly, if anything. But now he's going to stay long term. When you get a guy like Devontae Adams, a guy that is one of the best receivers in football, a guy that you know pretty well from college, you know for sure that Derek Carr is going to get an extension. Speaking of extensions too, Loro, we're going to also talk about the Matthew Stafford extension, which got announced a day or two ago yesterday. We also got to get through the Brown situation with Baker Mayfield and obviously the Deshaun Watson trade. But obviously, we'll go into that after we're getting through the rest of the AFC West. The J.C. Jackson move is huge, obviously, for the Chargers. The Chargers have been amazing this offseason. They added J.C. Jackson. They also added Gerald Everett to their tight end room today. I think they added some offensive linemen to help Justin Herbert.
And they got Khalil Mack, Khalil Mack knows Brandon Staley from Chicago, and they are reunited now.
Yeah, so each team really in that division really has. I mean, sorry about that. A pretty decent quarterback, if not elite. I mean, if you want to rank them, Laura, and I'll rank mine first in terms of the best. I'm going to go Mahomes, Herbert, Wilson, and Carr. Now, obviously, that's crazy to think because Carr's last, and Carr is pretty good for like a pretty decent quarterback room for another division, right? That's how good really a lot of quarterbacks are. Now, you could argue, can I go Wilson above Herbert? Sure, absolutely. But I think, and just in terms of the better team right now, better roster, I'd probably go with the Chargers over the Denver. And it's probably really close. That's how crazy this, anything can really happen. And Laura, another thing too is there has to be prime time for AFC West almost every single week. There should be no excuse with this amount of talent. It's just honestly like just watching AFC West football and just enjoying it. I'm not taking anything away from the outside.
You got to put these games at 4:25 Eastern time. You got to put one of these games in. You got to put one of these games either on a Thursday night or a Sunday night or a Monday night.
I mean, as crazy as it sounds, because a lot of the games in like England and stuff, like people get up for it and like, oh, it's the Titans and the Jags, it's the Jets and the Titans or the Buccaneers or something like that. But if somebody essentially said, oh, we're going to put the Russell Wilson against Justin Herbert on an 8 a.m. game. Yes, people have to get up. But, hey, if you hear about it and be like, I have to get up for this, for 8 a.m. football, sign me up, right? Something like that. But I agree with you, Laura. Primetime football is when people are trying to get, before their new work week or something. Nothing better to have, like a Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes matchup, which obviously is in the past. But the AFC West not only is just great with their quarterbacks, but just their overall other talent defensively too. So that's what's going to be so fun about this division next year. It's just every position essentially has really good players on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that this division is going to be tough, but from one good division to another, let's talk about what my initial thoughts on Deshaun Watson being a Cleveland Brown. I have to say, man, them and the Bengals are pretty much my co-favorites to win the AFC North. I'm putting Baltimore up there too. Pittsburgh, you can't underestimate. Does Mitchell Trubisky have what it takes to be a franchise quarterback again for the Steelers? I don't know because I don't like Mason Rudolph. Haskins, can he be the guy? Dwayne Haskins has kind of turned out to being a bust. I think this is Mitchell Trubisky's chance to kind of redeem himself in Pittsburgh.
Yep, and obviously you didn't talk about the Baker Mayfield situation, but for those that are not aware, before the Deshaun Watson news, it's been reported that Chris Mortensen that sides have obviously been kind of deteriorating from Baker Mayfield's camp and the Cleveland Browns. Throughout the week, he finally realized that he posted something, which actually Isaiah Leon, our very good friend from M16, put on via a message about a long-term message that Mayfield put. Obviously, this was before the request in the trade, but after reports, the day after, I believe, a report came out from ESPN's very own Adam Schefter saying that Baker Mayfield has requested a trade. Now, after that requested trade happened, there was reported out from the Browns that they were not accepting the permission to have Baker Mayfield getting traded. But now, Laura, after you see about this, right? Baker Mayfield has essentially kind of wanted to go to a couple teams that I think that could still upgrade their quarterback situation. Jimmy Garoppolo is still out there too for a team, which, by the way, I would ask in terms of where you think he will go after kind of all of the movement we have seen from free agency. But Baker Mayfield, I think, has kind of really made it clear that he wants out. And I personally think that the Colts are the team for Baker Mayfield and the one that he has kind of really looked at for the last couple of days here. But the Deshaun Watson news, that's what I want to get into before we get into the Baker Mayfield situation. I want to just go through the AFC North a bit. I agree with you. I really like the way the Bengals have been putting their offensive line together. Obviously, they were representing the AFC last year in the Super Bowl, really close to even winning the Super Bowl. But regardless of the fact, the Bengals have nothing to be worried about. They got a really good receiving core. So Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Burrow. Now you add some help offensive line. That helps a huge amount for their team. Defensively, I still think that they have some work to do, but they're going to be really up there in the division. The AFC North, you got a guy like the Deshaun Watson. Now, obviously, it comes with absolutely huge cost because of his civil lawsuits that has gone on with him. Now, the Browns also added Jacoby Brissett, and I think that they added Jacoby Brissett lower because of this. Personally, I still think that Deshaun Watson could get suspended. They probably don't know how many games yet. I think maybe 3 or 4 games is probably fair in a way, but we have to see this case. Maybe he doesn't get suspended at all. Personally, I think he will. But they add a guy like Jacoby Brissett, who, by the way, actually he's not a bad failing quarterback. He shouldn't be our long-term answer. He shouldn't play for a full season. But when he was in Miami, he actually filled in until it got hurt. He played for almost a quarter of their season last year. So the Browns at least know that he can come in and play a couple of games. Deshaun got suspended. Plus, also, too, Loro, Case Keenum, who was Baker Mayfield's backup, he is now going to the Buffalo Bills in a via of a trade. So now, really, you look at this quarterback situation from the Cleveland Browns, the 2 quarterbacks, one who is disgruntled and is asking for a trade, and the other one is the backup to that disgruntled quarterback is on the move already in a trade. So the Cleveland Browns are obviously moving their quarterback room, changing it like crazy. But I really like what they're doing there. They added Amari Cooper to help with their receiving room. There is a possibility, too, if Jarvis Landry maybe can come back. He ran to the wish for a trade, but maybe he comes back. Maybe the Browns really want him back. They got a good offensive line. You still have Nick Chubb. You still have Kareem Hunt. I know that they didn't bring back Austin Hooper. He's going to the Titans, but they also have David Njoku, who I think could have a decent year. So the Browns, I think, are still be good. Their defense is still okay. The Ravens, you still don't know about. And the Ravens, I think, this is going to be a huge question mark with the Ravens. What is Lamar Jackson really? He's a great electrifying quarterback, a great talent. Now, Greg Roman, a lot of Raven fans kind of via Twitter and stuff have been saying that they've been kind of holding him back in terms of his throwing ability. But the way I still see it with the Ravens is I still need to see more from Lamar Jackson's arm. I'm not discrediting and saying it's a bad thing at all with him, but I also have to see more from him. And obviously, Lamar is in a situation where he is due for a contract talk, down the road for a possible extension. I don't think there's been any talks just yet, but we'll have to kind of see what the Ravens do from there. I still think, though, the Ravens are going to be a good team. Remember, too, Loro, one running back that did not play last year for the Ravens, who I think is going to have a huge year, is J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins is a huge, great running back where they missed last year. So they're a great running team. They got still a good, decent defense. And then you obviously look at the other team in Pittsburgh. I actually didn't want the Trubisky move, Laura, but it's not going to be a move that can say, oh, you look at these other teams and say, oh, we can compete for them to go over the top. It's just kind of a stopgap move to see maybe, they figure out their quarterback situation via draft after or maybe change via trade. We'll see what happens there. But they didn't have to pay for a lot, the kind of a low risk, high reward for a guy like Mr. Trubisky, who first I still think has some left to prove. And, but I think, too, that they have a lot of aging guys. And personally, I think that they still have some work to do on their team. So, really, I agree with you. The Browns, the Ravens, and the Bengals are kind of the 3 teams that are be kind of up in the pack for that division.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I think that Deshaun Watson's going to be a great addition to the Cleveland Browns. And I think that not only he's going to help with the passing game, I think you have a guy. He's going to be working with a guy like Nick Chubb, who I think is going to take a lot of pressure off of Deshaun Watson when it comes to him running the football.
Yeah, I mean, we got to see how Deshaun is. We don't know with all the civil lawsuits. Has he been doing any workouts? Has he been getting ready to play football? I personally think he's just such a good talent that it's probably not going to take him a whole lot of time, at least for him to kind of get back physicality shape and throwing shape. But I just think it's going to um, just his physical mindset, making sure that he is there, like in the football mindset, because he's gone through a whole lot, and it's just a huge taxing thing for a guy that really his life could have really gone to a different direction outside of football, which it kind of did it for a long period of time this past season. But I think that with him maybe playing football, a thing that he loves to do, hopefully that he comes back because he's such a great talent. I've been telling a bunch of my buddies about this, and I'm glad to see him back and playing. Just hopefully we'll see in terms of how many games he can play and making sure that he can go out and play.
Yeah, I think that he will. I think that do I think Cleveland can win the AFC North with Watson? I think it's certainly a possibility though, but I still favor the Cincinnati Bengals though.
Well, I mean, you look at the Bengals; they were just in the Super Bowl, so I mean, you got to kind of give them the props are due. Zach Taylor is still their coach, who was kind of questionable in ways here and there, but the Bengals are going to be up there, Loro. I don't know who's going to win that division yet. I haven't really made my pick yet for that. I think it's just too early. But let's at least go to this Deshaun Watson. I mean, not Deshaun, Baker Mayfield saga. I guess you should say. I just want to kind of get your input in terms of it. Do you personally think that he is all done? You need the experiment is all over. Do you think that a change of scenery is needed? And if there is a change of scenery, which looks like more likely than not, what are your teams for Baker Mayfield? And maybe if he can you know, kind of get himself a little bit back on track because theoretically Baker Mayfield for many couple seasons here has kind of gotten hurt, and he brought the Browns kind of from the dumpster fire to at least kind of relevancy. So he did something right, but he can just never kind of put it together. Not saying he's kind of like a Carson Wentz type, where a guy that has some promise just can't. Baker Mayfield has a ton of promise. He has a pretty decent arm, but he just has a lot of stuff on off the field. And what do you think about the whole Baker Mayfield situation? Like I said, where do you think it could possibly go? Do you think the experiment is over? Obviously, after Watson is there. And what are your thoughts?
I don't think Baker Mayfield was the problem for the Cleveland Browns. He did everything he could to bring Cleveland back to a championship contender, but the thing with him, he just couldn't even stay healthy. I could see him going to the Indianapolis Colts because I think that Frank Reich could really work with a quarterback like Baker Mayfield. The Colts need a long-term answer at quarterback. I think if Baker Mayfield's healthy and if he gets traded to Indianapolis, I could see him being the long-term answer in Indianapolis.
I think it's just a great fit because a lot of what the Colts do and a lot of the a lot of what the Colts do, what the Browns do is very similar, right? You got a very good running game. You got Nick Chubb that he used to be with and Kareem Hunt, and now you can go to Indianapolis with Jonathan Taylor. You also have good offensive coaching too. You go from Kevin Stefanski to Frank Reich. So I think it's just a really good, smooth transition. And that's why, personally, I think that's why Baker Mayfield sees this opportunity to go there. I really do. And I think that, you see that you have Michael Pittman out there. So you have the number one, really, because I think T.Y. Hilton is a number two at this point in his career. But I really like that move for the Colts if that happens. Watch out for this move to possibly happen. I know I predicted the Trevor's. We'll get into. I know it's baseball, but I did predict as a Red Sox fan myself. I predicted to see where Trevor Story where he would go from last night, and it happened to be when I was at work this morning. But watch Baker Mayfield situation coming this week.
Yeah, we'll talk about Trevor Story on Tuesday, though.
Yeah, I know. I expect more of the Baker Mayfield camp. Trade everything saga-wise coming up probably early this week because, that also looks at this way too, Laura. Matt Ryan, right? Matt Ryan, you
Matt
got to see
Ryan
it
wants a new extension with
he
after
wants a
the
new
Falcons.
extension. Do you think he deserves one? Do you feel like the Falcons should go a younger route and maybe have Ryan for there one more season and change that up? We still have some, a lot of question marks before the free agency. As they say, NFL is king, and it's king for a reason because just news just never stops. And it definitely will kind of maybe die out maybe after a week or two. Maybe we'll start opening day for baseball, and obviously March Madness finishes up. But then you'll start to get maybe the mock drafts in, which are crazy as of right now. But you'll really kind of get them in like the week before. That obviously happened with free agency being done. But where do you think what Jimmy Garoppolo's situation is, though? What teams could be out there for Jimmy G? And what do you think the situation with Matt Ryan is?
For Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm still sticking that I still have him going to Houston just for him to compete with Davis Mills for the starting job. I don't rule out Houston adding Matt Corral just because now that they have another first round pick to work with, they need a franchise quarterback though. Right now, Davis Mills is a starter. That could change. And for Matt Ryan, I see him staying in Atlanta because I think that he could really help this young Atlanta Falcons team get back to being on track. But now that Tom Brady's back in Tampa, the Falcons are just now standing in like being third or second now. But for me, it's more third place for the Falcons in the NFC South. NFC South, I mean.
So there also is one other quarterback that actually two. They're not high profile names, but I look at it this way: Jameis Winston is still a free agent. I do believe that they have reported that he's going back to the Saints, but Jameis can play in a backup role. He can play in a starting role. I personally think that he's going to be a starter. But let me just play mystery. We'll see what happens with Jimmy G. I think, Loro, I'm going to go your route. I think he's going to stay home. Personally, I don't think that Jimmy G minds if he's still competing with a guy like Trey Lance. He knows still the system. He knows Kyle Shanahan pretty well. I wouldn't be surprised if he stays. I really don't, because I feel like there would be more of a market at this point right now for Jimmy G. Washington could have been a place that they could have a quarterback, but now they have Carson Wentz. Maybe Carolina, because Carolina missed out on Deshaun Watson. The Saints obviously missed out on Deshaun Watson, but they now looks like they have Jameis and Taysom. So maybe Seattle. I don't know about that. If Baker Mayfield, from what it sounds like, doesn't go for some reason, if he didn't stay, right, I think that would be absolutely ridiculous. For a fifth-year option to be behind his starting quarterback, he deserves to be a starter somewhere else. But if Baker didn't go to Indy, that's the other place I think where Jimmy G could go, right? So I think that Jimmy is also kind of evaluating the situation with Cleveland, with Baker Mayfield, and saying, kind of setting, a situation there that if Baker goes to the Colts, now what is Jimmy's situation like, right? Another thing, too, to make this even more fun, Matt Ryan. And that's where we're going to get, that's how I can transition over to this, is Matt Ryan. I'm not sure what his contract situation is like right now.
He has a big cap hit on his contract, though, but I'd still see him staying in Atlanta. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get traded. You got to get ready for the Trey Lance era in San Francisco.
Agreed. And it just, there still seems like there is some moving around that has to be finalized between three guys: Baker Mayfield, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan will stay at Loro, but how long does he stay? If he wants an extension, does Atlanta grant his extension? Personally, I don't think he wants to stay there for another 3 years, just because they are more rebuilding than reloading, I guess you can say, in this way. Listen, they don't have
Arthur Smith needs his own quarterback eventually, and he would like to get his own guy at some point, but I think Arthur Smith is the right coach for the Falcons, but he did say that he would like to still keep Matt Ryan around, though.
Exactly. This is what I should think that they should do. The Falcons should. They should draft the quarterback for this season, have him learn under a guy, Matt Ryan, who's been there and knows the thing for a pretty good time, and then move on from Ryan and see, because there will be teams next year that will be looking for quarterbacks. I think that this Matt Ryan situation will get revisited for next season if he doesn't get moved this offseason, because unless he gets an extension, which doesn't seem very likely for an older type of quarterback who maybe wants to go somewhere else and maybe has a better chance to win than Atlanta right now, that's what's going to be going on for next season. So Jimmy G, I agree with you, Loro. I personally think that he will get moved, but I would not be shocked at this point if he stays. I'm kind of 50-50 with him, really. Baker Mayfield absolutely will get moved. I don't think that there really is any question even at this point, especially not Deshaun in Cleveland.
Anyways, now with that being said, let's talk about some Buffalo Bills news here. And also, Cole Beasley got released by the Bills. And what was your reaction when the Bills got Von Miller? And you know what? What my reaction was as a Patriots fan, and I'm like, Von Miller to the Buffalo Bills, and I have to see him twice a year in our division going up against Mac Jones. I'm like, I don't want to even play the Bills right now just because that defense has really gotten an upgrade in Von Miller. I think that Jerry Hughes is going to stay. They just released Star Lou Talele. Ed Oliver is going to be really good and a force on the middle. And the Bills' offense is still going to get better with Josh Allen.
Well, this is the biggest thing, right? When we saw with Brady for many seasons, we were so lucky, so spoiled, so fortunate. And this is not obviously a knock on Mac Jones at all, because I love Mac Jones. I love him as a quarterback. But you look at star talent at quarterback position. You look at the team, you look at their competitiveness. Free agents look at that. And for many seasons, Patriots got a lot of good free agents because they saw who was under center, right? Josh Allen is going to be a long-term star in this league. Von Miller is a guy that's getting older up there. He already saw, he won over with Matthew Stafford, but he said, listen, I can go win a ring possibly with another different team and make my money. Now, to be fair, Loro, as an older type of player, he got paid. I personally think that was overpay, but if you're the Bills, they're like, listen, we're trying to win their first Super Bowl. We don't really care how much we pay this guy. And he still, I feel like, has left some stuff left in the tank. So this is a really good move for the Buffalo Bills. Von Miller's a good piece. Not too happy that he's in our division now.
I mean, either.
With Mac Jones, and he's going to be coming for blood for sure. Which that Bills team will be definitely coming for blood, especially after getting reminded the 13 seconds probably this whole entire offseason. They're probably listen. Thinking to myself, listen, let's move on and get our revenge for this season, which I think could be a very possible option because they're going to be very good next season once again. Cole Beasley now. I personally think that the vaccination situation was a little bit of a factor, but I also think that Cole Beasley just wanted to change. They have a lot of good players in that receiving room. The Bills do. Stephon Diggs. Gabe Davis really kind of turned into a really good star, probably number 2. They also added Isaiah McKenzie back for a couple seasons. And they obviously have a great tight end, Dawson Knox. So,
you have him and OJ Howard on tight end. I mean, I wonder how Buffalo's going to use OJ Howard. Are they going to use him in the passing game, or is he going to be more of a blocker? My gut also tells me that I have the Bills drafting a receiver to complement Gabriel Davis and Stephon Diggs. You better watch out for Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, man. I think the Bills for sure are going to add some more premier talent via the draft, which just makes them even better. Maybe hit a home run on some guys. Billy Beane has been a great GM for them for a couple seasons now.
Brandon Beane has done a really good job with this. Not Billy Beane. Billy Beane's an Oakland A, but Brandon Beane has done a really good job with this roster. And I don't think Emmanuel Sanders is coming back because I feel like that Gabriel Davis is the number 2. I think that their next number 3 guy will come from the draft.
Yeah, we'll see how things go there. But, I mean, we got through a ton of talk today for about an hour in terms of just trades and analyzing and stuff like that. Is there anything that you want to get to in terms of leftover thoughts? Because I feel like we really hit on a bunch of stuff.
We talked about Russell Wilson to Denver. What was your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay and then Tom Brady coming out of retirement and continuing to play for the Tampa Bay Bucks?
We went through about a whole hour and didn't mention the Tom Brady situation.
We
Crazy
had
to
to,
think, right?
we had to talk about this. This show
Yeah,
was.
I'm sure. So let me start there. Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady?
You start with Tom Brady. He's our guy.
All right. Okay. All right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So I was just, eating my dinner, I think a couple weeks ago on a Sunday. Actually, it was Sunday. I believe this happened last Sunday, if I think about it now. Crazy thing, it felt like it was forever ago now. They unretired. Um, Listen, I'm not surprised about this. I know I talked about analyzing that night, I think, on the extra point, that the greatest of all time, Tom Brady, is coming back, playing football. Love to see that as a Patriot fan myself, but just as a long-term Brady fan. My quarterback per se, even though I love Mac Jones for sure, but he was just doing so well. It just felt like very interesting timing with the situation, Loro. I don't know if you knew a lot of the news off the field, but I kind of watched some shows here with some guys, right? And I'm going to tell you some news that I kind of read about here. First of all, let's go to Phil Perry and Tommy Curran. The Buccaneers essentially kind of left the door open for Tom Brady in the offseason at the NFL Combine. Bruce Arians essentially said, "We're not expecting Brady back." Now, Jason Light said, "If anything happens that he changes his mind, we'll keep the light on Tom Brady for a potential return." Now, there was reports out saying that, he got a house down in Miami. Did you ever hear about this situation, Laura? About Tom Brady getting a house down in Miami and possibly teaming up with Sean Payton down in Miami with the Miami Dolphins. And after those talks with the Brian Flores situation happened, because he retired, this tentative retirement happened during the Brian Flores situation, and obviously Sean Payton retired. He's like, okay, we can't do this now since we're playing anymore. Okay, now he goes to, okay, he takes a trip over. He played a little bit of golf. He's not very good at golf, but he decided to say, he had an interview with Fred Couples kind of a week or two before he got retired, and they asked, how he's doing, how he's feeling. Say, I'm doing fine. It sounded like from his interview he was very bored. And then the next thing happened where he went over to the West Coast and possibly was there talks and rumblings of maybe him trying to get a contract with the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers essentially said, we're not trading the greatest quarterback of all time. And obviously that's understandably. But they essentially said, any type of moves that Tom Brady wants to have a branded or of, we're not doing it. So what Brady did was he went to go see the Glazers over in England. And this was last weekend, I think. He went to a soccer match. I don't know if you know this whole story about this soccer match, but he
was really in England, though.
Yeah, he went to go see Man U, see one of his idols, Cristiano Ronaldo. And there was two things that really stood out to this. The first thing was Cristiano Ronaldo had a hat trick in that game. He was going crazy. You could see Brady just kind of in the crowd, just kind of doing his thing. And I think Brady looks at the situation and says, "Listen, if he's doing this so well still, why can't I? At 45 years old, I just put up MVP numbers. I can still have a team that could possibly win one more Super Bowl. I have talent there, even though there's a ton of free agents for the Bucs that can maybe come back." He looks at this and says, "I'm not trying to go one more year. I think I got it." And then Cristiano Ronaldo, there's a viral video on Tom Brady, actually his story on Instagram. And Cristiano Ronaldo said, "Another year, possibly." And Brady just kind of had that, like that smile in a way, that smirk. And I'm like, he's coming back. He's coming back. And like a day or two after, he put the post out, and he said the LFG. That's when you know that he's excited. I personally think this is his final dance. I think this is his last dance. I personally think this is over for him after the season. I think that he sees this as a way in terms of Super Bowl or bust. For a lot of seasons with Tom Brady, it is that way. But I think that Kyle Trask can learn one more season. And then after this year for the Buccaneers, unless Brady wants to go another year, but he's going to be 45. He said he wants to play till 45. I personally think that he's going to stay to his word now. He's going to play till 45. He's going to play one more year with the Bucs. They got everybody back. They got Chris Godwin back, which we didn't even get to Chris Godwin's extension, but Chris Godwin got extended.
Yeah, well, speaking of him, I mean, I think Chris Godwin staying in Tampa is a really good thing, though, now that we're on the Tampa Bay topic here.
Mm-hmm. So Chris Godwin got extended. Ryan Jensen, his center, got brought back to Tampa Bay. Carlton Davis, who they didn't even expect to come back, he came back. Listen, it's all the Brady effect after this. After they found that Brady came, they tried to get as many as their guys back. I think the only guy that they really – two guys. Alex Kappa, a guy on their offensive line, and then Jordan Whitehead on their secondary. He had to go to the Jets. So Brady really sees this as an opportunity. So a lot of his offense coming back. They also had a Russell Gage as a number 3 option. And there's also to report that maybe he was calling for Julio Jones. So, I mean, he's trying to just stack up, and Rob Gronkowski's still out there lower. I think that Rob Gronkowski's going to be back in Tampa now with Brady back. There was a report out if Brady was still not playing, after his retirement, that maybe he could play with Joe Burrow now with Uzomah out there. So, I'm happy that Tom is back. I'm not surprised about this retirement situation. Get to see him play one more season. Hopefully, I can get to see him at a game somewhere. I'm not sure yet, but he's going to have a really tough schedule. I've seen a lot of his opponents. He's going to have a very fun, tough schedule this year. So I think it's a really tough challenge for his final year, but I think he's ready for the opportunity. And we'll see in terms of if he gets number 8. This is really it now for him. 45 years old. He said to his word. He got a bunch of his guys back. So this is it for him. As much as I love him, dearly to my heart, forever and ever, I personally think that he goes one more year and says, listen, whatever happens, happens. I mean, I know that he doesn't want to finish his career off as a loss.
No, he didn't want to lose to the Rams, though. If you look at it, that was the game that was like, I was like, Brady's not retiring after this because of this.
Yeah. No, there's been a couple times reports out there saying if Brady won a certain Super Bowl early on his career, maybe he retired earlier than now. He's just that competitive that he's striving for perfection, right? And he is trying to see if there's any kind of leftover that he's like, oh, let me make sure I get that. And let me make sure I find that. It's just so – that's what he's so great is he doesn't – that's kind of like why I model Brady so much too. Now, on the field off is – he sees this as being average is not good enough. And that's also a motto from a friend of mine from college is that I kind of learned is being average is not good enough. I always try to get myself better and better each day by the day. I always find something different that I want to make sure that I get even better with. And that's what Tom Brady really does. He gets himself better. He trains his body really well. Like I said, Lord, to kind of wrap this up because I can go on and on about Brady. But I'm happy for him and glad he's back. Tampa Bay got a lot of their guys back, and it's essentially kind of a run it back, I guess you can say, a last dance, which essentially Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams tried to do last season, where he's going to have the chance to do this season.
Anyways, to end the night here, what's your thoughts on the Matthew Stafford extension, Andrew Whitworth retiring, and then the Rams trading Robert Woods to get Allen Robinson?
Well, now with like a lot of offseason, we're talking about kind of nearby teams each. I just want to get into that Packer situation quickly with Aaron Rodgers before we go to the Rams. We obviously talked about the Packers. There are 2 guys. Actually, 3 there are 3 key guys. Aaron Rodgers coming back, not a surprise. Even though I had him for Denver, a lot of chatter in the last couple weeks before free agency. It felt like it was coming together. He just needed to make sure that the culture was kind of back on track, and he saw this opportunity this past offseason and kind of said, listen, we want to kind of get our talks back on track. And, now he's back with Green Bay. I think it's a 3-year, 4-year deal. Laura, if you want to give out the contract details for Rodgers, that'd be awesome. But if not, don't worry about it. So he is signing there for the next 3-4 years, trying to see if there's an opportunity to win a Super Bowl. But now he can't do it now without one of his top guys because he has now moved on, which you talked about. And that's Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams was put first on the franchise tag, but the Raiders decided to give him a trade with the Packers. And now Devontae Adams, after many seasons in Green Bay, is going to have a new challenge in Oakland, or now Vegas, with a gauntlet division. The next guy, the last guy who's kind of there, it's actually two. Sorry, I'm talking too much tonight. Jalir Alexander, cornerback. He's a guy, I don't know if he's still out there. They also added back Raziel Douglas, who was a really good cornerback last year. Was pretty much a pick machine, if I remember. And then Zadarius Smith. Zadarius Smith was kind of their next guy. And essentially, first, that he signed a deal with the Baltimore Ravens. And, he was one of the guys that a couple of guys that kind of actually, because trades weren't officially official until free agency. So essentially, guys that kind of signed beforehand, they essentially kind of agreed to the deals, but they can also change their minds. And that's what Zadarius Smith said. He was originally going to go to the Ravens, and he changed his mind. So he's actually out there in the market, which Patriots maybe take a look at. Probably not going to happen, but that was the Packers. Now the Rams. Matthew Stafford 100% should get that extension because the Rams have a pretty good defense. They have a quarterback that they believe in with Sean McVay. And even though Sean McVay is in the reports out there this past offseason about broadcast and stuff, he knows this guy really well now. And that was a win-win trade between Jared Goff and Matt Stafford. It paid off at the end because Matt Stafford won the Super Bowl. He had to go through Brady and Rodgers and Joe Burrow to get there to win. So he gets the money, deservedly so. Odell Beckham Jr. Well, let's see what happens with Odell Beckham Jr. because they added Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson, Loro, we didn't get to him, even though there's just so many guys that we can get into. And maybe if there's some guys we forget about, because I know we can go on for another 2-3 hours about the other guys, but, obviously I can't talk for much longer after this. We obviously can talk more in another show coming up, but to conclude off, man, oh man, I can't talk it right now, but
I know it's lots of talk about, lots of off-season drama here, but it's been a great NFL offseason so far.
Absolutely. Allen Robinson got a good deal from the Rams. That should really help out their core, along with Von Jefferson, Cooper Kupp. So Odell Beckham is a free agent, and maybe we'll see. Maybe Odell Beckham maybe going somewhere different. Preferably, I think he's going to go back to the Rams because I think he likes it there. I think he likes Stafford a lot. And why wouldn't you leave a place that you've won a ring? The only thing that I see there is probably a Von Miller situation where he goes for more money and maybe goes for a team that, could also win too, the Super Bowl. So, yeah, that's really and also the Robert Woods situation. Robert Woods is coming off an ACL tear. There was some chatter that he could be going somewhere else. That happened a couple days ago. There's a report now out that he is now going to be wide receiver number 2 for the Tennessee Titans behind A.J. Brown. So the Titans now have Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Julio Jones obviously got caught. This is obviously a replacement now for Julio Jones. So they have A.J. Brown now, Robert Woods, who I still think has a lot of good football left, Austin Hooper at tight end. That's kind of it for now.
Yeah, and then also Andrew Whitworth. We will miss Andrew Whitworth. I think Big Whit is going to be missed, and he was a family man. He was great for Los Angeles, and I think the Rams won't be the same without Andrew Whitworth.
Yeah, no, he's had a good career. He's played well. Actually, funny enough that the two teams that he played, in the Super Bowl, obviously he played with the Rams who he won. But the team he also played against was a team he played for, and that was the Bengals. So kind of cool coincidence to see him retire after playing for the two teams that represented the Super Bowl. Obviously, one that he won with, and obviously the team that he lost with, he also played with. So great career for him. Happy for him.
Anyways, folks, some final thoughts is that next Loro and Friends show won't be until the draft, and Ben and I will be back on there on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time for This Week in Baseball. We'll have a new episode then. We'll talk about Trevor's story going to Ben's Boston Red Sox, and also talk about if there's any other free agents that still need to be signed, like could Michael Conforto be signed by then, and also some more Cactus and Grapefruit League games, and we'll go from there, as we are basically 2 more weeks away from opening day.
Yeah, my final thoughts are, once again, Laura, thank you for having me. Like always, definitely a great pleasure. Tonight, obviously, we talked some football, lots of football for a good hour. Obviously, there's probably some leftover thoughts that we maybe could talk about, but I went on and on and on. Hopefully, you didn't get too bored of me talking a lot tonight.
No, you're
But,
good, man.
I'm glad that I got as much as I could out of this, and for any of the people that joined, appreciate it like always. And I'm looking forward to another good week this coming week. Obviously free agency was last week, but I still think that there are some free agents that could be out there. Baseball, there's obviously going to be some kind of leftovers. So, as you saw from, it's kind of like in a dinner, right? You could see the big portion, I guess you could say, free agency was kind of last week. And now you can kind of see this week is kind of the leftovers. There's still some guys out there. Maybe some guys can get some really good guys via NFL and via baseball, but this is kind of more the conclusion, and really excited to kind of talk about my analyzing of the Deshaun situation and, Brady and Rodgers and Stafford, and, I can go on and on, a couple teams, what their situation is. Obviously, starting off the show with the Patriots and what their situation is. So, like always, man, I appreciate it. And, looking forward to our next show, and hope you have a good rest of your week.
Next
start of the week.
Yeah, we'll be talking baseball on Tuesday. So for Ben, Loro signing off for now. This Week in Baseball on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Have a great night, everyone.